everyone, it's Shannon here for Honeybee Stamps. In today's video, we're going to create this birthday card. We're going to use the new Quatrefoil Layers Stencils to create this really fun and vibrant background, perfect for a birthday card. I'm going to start today's card with the background and the new Quatrefoil Layers Stencil. This set comes with two stencils, a top and a base. Each stencil is labeled. You can see here as I hold up the camera that says Quatrefoil Top on there. And I'm going to grab the base and hold that up to the camera so you can see the label on that as well. The base has tighter openings while the top has kind of larger openings. I'm going to ink blend with the stencils over an A2 panel of off-white or cream cardstock. Once I get my stencil centered, I'll then use a couple pieces of Micropore Tape to hold that in place. And then I'm going to start ink blending over this with picked raspberry. I'm going to ink blend a rainbow and I'm doing it at an angle. Once I finished with picked raspberry, I moved on to Mermaid Lagoon, kind of overlapping that picked raspberry a little bit. That creates kind of like a purple, which is really pretty. I am trying to keep this pretty light. I do go back to the picked raspberry real quick just to kind of smooth out that transition between the two colors. Now I'm moving on to pine needles. This is going to be my green. Again, kind of trying really hard to keep this light because when we move on to our next layer, which is the base stencil, this is going to get, I want to ink blend that really dark and heavy handed. So I have to make sure that this is pretty light. So that dark heavy-handed layer really has a lot of contrast from this light layer. I hope that makes sense. So I just finished up with mustard seed, wild honey, and now my last corner here is a little bit of barn door. Now the fun part, we're going to pull off the stencil. You can see, oh, how pretty that is. Gorgeous rainbow. Now I've grabbed the base, centered it, and again, going to use a couple pieces of Micropore Tape to hold it in place. And then I'm going to go back over with my exact same colors of ink. This time I started with barn door, and then I'm working back kind of backwards through my rainbow, a wild honey, then mustard seed, and then pine needles. And again, I'm trying to be really heavy-handed this time, so really laying on that ink thickly as I want a lot of contrast between the two layers, so you really see the definition of that first stencil that we did, which is the top, and then the second, which is the base. So now I remove the stencil, hold it to the camera, and hopefully you'll see those two layers. I think this adds a lot of depth and really pretty design. Love this quatrefoil design, and kind of fun to do it in rainbow because it's kind of a elegant design, but with rainbow it really makes it a lot more fun. We're now going to move on to our image. I'm going to use the Happy BEEday stamp set. Going to grab this cute bear holding a balloon and stamp him onto a scrap of Nina Solar White. Going to ink him up in Memento Tuxedo Black, which is a Copic friendly ink. Now that he's stamped, I'm ready to color him. I'm going to use my Copic starting with the bear and my light brown, which is E35. Just going to color the whole bear with that, except for I'm going to avoid his little snout and tummy. I'm going to use actually some light tans for that. So I'm just quickly laying down this lighter color for my base. Then I'm going to grab my darker brown, which is E39, and start coloring in that shadow. Go basically around every edge of the bear, basically. Kind of anywhere where I think should be in shadow. Now, I'm not being like totally accurate where the shadow would fall. I just want some definition to him. So now that I've finished with that darker, I'm going back to my lighter brown and just kind of blending out that darker brown to create a smooth transition between the two colors, so he really has a soft look. Now moving on to those tan areas, starting with E30 first, and then I'll finish with E31 next, just to kind of create a real quick shadow. Grabbed E49 for his nose, and now I'm on to the balloon, starting with R17 as the base, and then moving on to R27 to add a shadow, and then I will kind of soften that back with R17. Now moving on to his hat, just a couple blues picked out for his hat for basically the base, and then for the dots, a couple greens picked out for the cute little polka dots on his hat, and then we'll finish with that tassel, a couple pinks, kind of picked colors that were similar to what I used in the background. Now I'm going to grab a white gel pen, fix any areas where I got my kind of colored outside the lines, and also add this pretty kind of like shine onto the bear. This is just kind of a fun look, I think, especially for something like a birthday card. So now I'm going to move on to creating part of my sentiment, mainly my word die for my sentiment. I die cut 3 birthdays out of the birthday die or birthday honey cut set. And I'm going to first add some liquid glue to one of them and then adhere 2 together, stack 2 on top of each other to create a little dimension. After I stacked that together, I'm going to move on to this shadow layer that I die cut out of vellum, add some liquid glue to the backside of my stacked sentiment, and then I will adhere that right onto the vellum layer. And that vellum layer is going to create a really nice little shadow and just kind of make the sentiment kind of pop away or separate a little bit from the background. Just kind of helps to make it not so busy where you're trying to read the sentiment. Now I'm going to just do the dots really quick. I had those set aside so I wouldn't lose them. I'm just going to stack 2 up on one on top of the other, just kind of like how I did the birthday, and adhere them to the vellum. Now for my last birthday die cut out of white cardstock, I'm going to add liquid glue to the top of it and adhere it to the back side of my stacked birthday sentiment. This last birthday provides a little bit of lift so the vellum doesn't rest directly onto my cardstock, and when the vellum is lifted a little bit away, it looks more opaque and again kind of makes that sentiment pop away from or separate, help your eye separate it from the background. So I'm now going to move on to stamping the rest of my sentiment. I have the birthday stamp set. I'm going to grab a couple stamps from that set to complete my sentiment. Use the word die and my image to kind of help me figure out where I wanted those stamps to go, and then ink them up with Memento Tuxedo Black and stamp them on to my panel. Now all I have to do is kind of assemble everything. I'm going to use liquid glue here to adhere my panel down. Now this cream cardstock is very thin. I think it's only 65 weight. So I kind of spread some glue out and then use my finger to kind of soften it or make it flat, just so I didn't have to worry at all about any bubbling happening on my panel. You could definitely use a tape runner if you prefer. I'm just running low on my tape runners. And now I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back side of my birthday, but before I stick that down, I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back side of the bear. I want to get them both ready to go with glue, so if I do have to do any adjusting, I can adjust the bear. The bear hasn't dried before I get all the glue on the backside of the birthday, so if I do need to adjust the bear a little bit, I can. But everything looks good. It went really smoothly, so I'm just going to hold that for a second to let that glue set, and here's the finished card. I just love how this card turned out. It's so cheery and happy, and that background is just beautiful. Love the more jewel-toned rainbow colors that I went with this time, and that little bit of definition that we get by using the Quatrefoil Layers Stencils. I think that's so cool how we have kind of this light shadow and then the darker center. I just think that's such a cool kind of layered look. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you have any questions about the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.